So here we go. This is the $281,942 that we spent in fiscal year 2010. Well, we can't cut state assessments. I talked about what the state gives us. They also take from us. They work it out, the formula. So they're going to give us all that money. They also say, well, we need some of your money for charter schools. We need some of your money for regional air pollution control. We need some of your money for regional transit authority. They take and they take and they take. And then we have the deficits. And this year we have that big $2.8 million deficit. But anyway, that quickly knocked that 282 down to 267 in 2010. We also have a requirement that we give certain abatements to people for property taxes. Jack was looking for an abatement to deal with the adopted island. But, you know, occasionally we have 28,000 pieces. We have 28,000 pieces of property in the city that we have to assess. We try, but we're not perfect. Every now and then, we say that a property is worth something, and it's not. That we might be off. And we're probably off on the other side, too, that we've undervalued certain properties, but we can't do anything about those. We catch those down the road. But we have to then take the money and give it to people. It's what's known as an overlay account. That we set aside money every year. We also give exemptions. If you're blind, disabled, a veteran, elderly, if you meet certain income and wealth standards, you're eligible for an exemption. We give you that on your tax bill. So but you have to set aside money for it. So that's not a 266. Schools, they're a priority. The state tells us we have to spend it. They give us all that money to put towards schools, so you have to spend it on schools. And then they require that we set aside money. So that 282 that we started with a few minutes ago is now down to 134. Debt. We have to, you know, we built all these great schools over the last number of years, right? State paid 90%, but we still have to pay 10. That alone is, you know, probably somewhere in the vicinity of $30 million that we have to come up with, and we have to pay that a certain amount. I think the total amount of school debt that we pay this year, I want to say it's about $12 million. I might be wrong on that number. But in any event, it's, we do have debt service. Also, money we set aside for other public facilities, the library, the road projects, the equipment. We have to buy equipment. We just bought a lot of new equipment for our DPW. The guys that plow. The trucks that they were using were 30 and 40 years old. They'd seen better days, and we could no longer get parts for many of those trucks. So we got our money's worth out of those. So we had to buy new trucks. You have to pay that debt. And there's a lot of other things that goes into debt service. You have to pay that. That brings us down to 115. Health insurance, all those fixed cost stuff I talked about, that brings us down to $70 million. We don't have any choice on those things. We can play with them. I mean, pensions you really can't do much with. That's state law, as we talked about, what we spend. Health, we've made improvements. We've helped control some of those costs. But again, there's a lot of work to do. But it's all set by state law, how we have to negotiate that stuff. And $70 million. Greater Lowell Technical High School, $6 million off that. That's a fixed cost. They tell us what we pay, what we have to pay. And it's set by state, the state anyway. One thing you should always know is that cities and towns are creations of the state. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts decides whether we exist or don't exist. And they make the rules. We have a little bit of home rule power, but for the most part, they make the rules. So now we're down at $64 million. Public safety. We had the fire over here on Bridge Street. We had 3 companies closed that night. We do that pretty good amount. We have 3 closed. Police, we were at 260, now down at 228. The positive side, the crime rate's down. But, you know, you guys saw a break-in potentially happening the other night. We have problems that happen in the city. We have to have that police on staff. So when you take fire and police and throw it in here, now you're down to $29 million. Trash, streetlights, snow removal, now we're down to 21, almost $22 million. Again, we've saved money on our trash program. We've saved money on our streetlights. Snow removal, you can't control nature. When it snows, we have to send plows out. But So that knocks us down. But certainly, all these categories that I call fixed, we're certainly working to try to hold those down. But those are the ones that are more difficult. The rest, 21 million down to $7.1 million. That's all of our other employees. That's about 200. I think it's about 240 employees. The streets, the parks, cemetery employees we have now, and there's only really 5 of those. We're going to move into our public works department, the streets department, to fill vacancies over there. Library, senior center, all of our administrative offices. You know, when maybe you don't like to pay taxes, but you want to make sure that there's someone there to take it when you go in. Auditing, purchasing, human relations, recreation. I don't know if I missed veterans. All of those are in there. And you're down to $7 million. Again, we've eliminated a lot of those positions. We've cut over 20% of our DPW. We've cut in all of our other departments. If you cut much more, 1, you affect services, and then 2, you get the unemployment costs. Veterans benefits. We just throw this one in. We're required to spend that money, and we gladly spend it. It's required, though, that we do it. It's fixed. We get 75% reimbursement, but that shows up in the state aid that is part of the revenue picture. Heat, electricity, gasoline. We've worked hard to reduce those costs. Now we're down to $4.8 million because whatever we still use, we have to pay, and those costs continue to go up. So now at 4.8, and we need 1.6. That means of the money left, you need 1/3 of it to close your budget gap. And how's that money spent? That 4.8 goes towards asphalt to pave the roads, repair the roads, the telephone service to City Hall and all the city departments. When you call a dispatch, you want to make sure that there's a phone service there to answer it. Mailing all the bills, collecting those bills, traffic signal maintenance, pavement marking, which we don't do nearly enough of here in the city, street sweeping, to send those around, costs us money, software licenses, our website, and the other quote-unquote invisible services that we provide. Those are the big chunks, though. And asphalt, the price of oil, drives up the price of gasoline, also drives up the price of asphalt. So, to cut this $1.6 billion, that's what we're working at now. And that's what we will do between now and when we bring the city council a budget. But my purpose in coming out here tonight and going around to all the neighborhood groups is to explain sort of how we're doing, what we're up against, and what we're facing this year. There are no easy options. We look at personnel decisions. Do we need to fill positions? There will probably be some more layoffs this year. Limited, but there will be some. We have to look at our services. At this point, almost everything we do is essential. We're going to, one person's essential is another person's non-essential. But I don't know of anything that's non-essential in that budget. There's some things we do that, generate economic activity that we need to do. Employee concessions, we have had some, and we're going to continue to work with our unions on further concessions. They're interested in saving jobs, and they're interested in making sure the city government works. Education, well, we don't have much we can cut there, but I told you we're not giving them that $1 million that we gave them last year. Now, when by way of a introduction or to my closing here, when I was out at the Highland Neighborhood Association, I was here about 2 years ago, I guess it was, and I gave a presentation, and you guys took it a lot better than the Highland, or maybe it was just the mood I was in that night. I was out at the Highland Neighborhood Association, I gave them the whole presentation, and then someone looked at me at the end and said, "Is there any hope